Video games are not real life. That may sound obvious, but when we play a lot, we sometimes tend to forget it, especially when we think we've learned something about ourselves through games. For example, I chose to save this man because I'm a good man. I avoid violence because I'm a pacifist. My aggressive playstyle means I'm an intense person. No. More often than not, that's false. More often than not, our conclusions are wrong, but not all of them. There are lessons we can genuinely learn about ourselves through video games. It's just that they're not the ones that come to mind first, or rather, they're rarely the ones we'd like to believe. So what do video games really say about us? If we make certain choices, prefer certain games, or adopt certain behaviors, does that reflect who we truly are in real life? And if so, when? That's what we're going to explore in this video. For the past few months, I've been replaying Cyberpunk. For those unfamiliar, it's a game where you play as V in a futuristic world, making choices about how you respond and behave in Night City. This time, unlike my first playthrough, my approach is much more aggressive, much more self-centered. My character, my companions, that's all that matters. The rest of the world can burn for all I care, as long as my actions serve the interests of those I consider my clan. Does that mean I've become immoral or impulsive? Have I lost my values, or am I just in more of a hurry this time, making my second playthrough more efficient? Or am I simply curious to try a different playstyle? None of these statements are true, or rather my approach in Cyberpunk doesn't allow me to conclude anything. Why? Because playing this way costs me nothing. At worst, my character suffers the consequences, in a virtual world where I already know what influences the story. The truth is, I take no real risks playing this way. When I play competitive games in general, I tend to have an aggressive playstyle. In Smite, I love playing Hachiman. He's fast, built for killing, demands quick reflexes, and requires taking risks to make a difference. And in general, I take risks in this game. In Apex Legends, I love playing Octane, for very similar reasons, even though the games themselves are vastly different. I crave speed, action, even if it means making decisions I know are stupid from a strategic standpoint. I just can't stand being bored. This pattern repeats across many action-heavy games. I always go for the most intense experience, even if it lowers my chances of winning, even if it means dying stupidly, just because I want to play at the fastest pace possible. Does that reflect who I think I am in real life? Absolutely not. I see myself as a calm person, someone who avoids putting himself in situations where there's a lot to lose and little to gain. I approach life far more cautiously than I do action games. Why? Because playing like this carries no real risk. At worst, I lose a match. My intensity, my hunger for a relentless rhythm, it doesn't reflect my real-life behavior. When I play strategy games like Risk and Domination mode, where the goal is to conquer neighboring territories, I tend to adopt a nuclear submarine approach, which can be summed up as, I'm not here, ignore me. I'm not a threat, ignore me. Go about your business, ignore me. Boom. You're done. It doesn't always work, but that's often how I like to play, pretty much the opposite of how I approach action games. In strategy games, where what matters is thinking, staying a step ahead and seizing the right opportunities, I try to conceal my strength and options until it's too late to counter them. Is it the same in real life? I have no idea. I've never been in a similar situation. Maybe I would act the same way. Or maybe I'd end up making impulsive, reckless decisions in the heat of the moment. To this day, I've never been in a real-life scenario where annihilating opponents was the goal. And even if I had, the stakes wouldn't be the same. Winning a match in Risk or a game of chess has no real-world equivalent, because the consequences are entirely different. And that's my point. It's impossible to compare behaviors when the risks and consequences are nothing alike. The risks and consequences inherent to real life and those found in video games should never be confused. They each exist within entirely different frameworks. And frameworks, contexts, are everything. The rules that define them have almost nothing in common, and that alone makes all the difference. Losing a game of Risk and failing a salary negotiation, for example, that's night and day. We like to imagine who we should be in real life by looking at who we were in a game or a fictional scenario. A lot of people enjoy picturing themselves in hypothetical situations. How would they react in a fire? What would they do for a friend in a critical moment? Everyone makes grand promises, to others, to themselves, because promises cost nothing. And me too. In that sense, I'm just an ordinary guy. Of course, deep down I believe in my ability to pull off a 1 versus 9 street fight, because I grew up watching Naruto. Sweet fiction. But here's the thing. As long as the contexts are different, the actions can't be compared. And that's the mistake we often make when trying to draw conclusions about ourselves from video games. But sometimes it's possible, when the consequences inside the game or stemming from it actually affect reality. One evening, 2 friends and I decided to launch a game of Age of Empires 3. It's a real-time strategy game where the goal is to build structures, develop an economy, and turn it into a military force to crush your opponents. That's the gist of it. No alliances in this match. And typically, in a setup like this, a game rarely lasts very long. But the circumstances were unusual. I'll skip the details, but just know that we started fighting after 30 minutes, which never happens usually. And when you have 30 uninterrupted minutes to develop your economy before engaging in battle, you reach a point where you can sustain endless fights without anyone gaining the upper hand. We started the match at midnight, and we fought for 6 hours. Did anyone give up? No, we fought until I lost. And the consequences were real. One of my friends had an important meeting the next morning. I had things to do. And yet, we wrecked our sleep schedule for a game of Age of Empires. What does that say about us? That we're prideful? Maybe. That we don't quit once we start something? Possibly. That we're idiots who don't know how to pick our battles, sacrificing sleep for a video game? Likely. It's hard to draw a clear-cut conclusion, but at least this event offers a clue. It's a piece of information we can consider because the consequences of not giving up in the game also had real-life consequences. And while such examples are rare, they do exist. My favorite is impulsive spending in video games, using real money, actual dollars, euros, yen, etc. Does a player compulsively buy new cosmetics in a game? Is it just an occasional thing, or do they not care at all? That behavior in a game often says a lot about how they handle spending in real life. The more someone impulsively buys virtual items, the more likely they are to make impulsive purchases in general, and to make impulsive decisions overall. This comparison works because here, the context, and therefore the risks and consequences, are similar. Let's take another example. Social games, like Among Us, revolve around manipulation, influence, deception, and debate. These games can have real social consequences. Some people, even for something as trivial as winning a round, will adopt inherently toxic behaviors toward friends, even loved ones. And they do it knowingly. I think the ultimate test would be adding money to the equation to see how people truly behave. And no, that's not a suggestion, okay? But it's well known in poker, for example. Playing for money versus playing for free, it's a whole different game. No one plays the same way. Every individual is more complex than the sum of their behaviors in any given context. And every individual changes depending on the context. So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Reducing and oversimplifying a context to study someone's behavior, or even our own psyche, only leads to conclusions that apply within that limited context. Making an immoral choice in a game doesn't mean we've experienced immorality. Playing as a character different from ourselves doesn't mean we've experienced another person's perspective. Playing Baldur's Gate or Cyberpunk doesn't mean we've experienced a romantic relationship. Playing Spec Ops: The Line doesn't mean we've experienced war. Playing Metro Exodus doesn't mean we understand what it's like to survive an apocalypse. So drawing conclusions about our personality from our behavior in games, that generally makes no sense. Consider military training. It will be my last example. There are vast differences between a recruit's performance in training and in actual combat. Some recruits only excel in real operations. Yet training includes stress, pressure, and physical demands. But the context is different. Someone who has never been to war doesn't understand war. And to be clear, I don't claim to understand war either. Thus, the world of video games and reality rarely overlap. And while games can help develop certain skills, they rarely prepare us mentally for real life. There are very few cases where these contexts truly intersect. However, the emotions games provoke, those don't lie. When a story, a choice, or an experience makes us angry, fills us with joy, or leaves us deep in thought, those emotions are ours. So instead of trying to define our personality through contexts that aren't reality, let's ask a different question. What do these emotions echo within us? When a character stumbles, when a glance moves you, when a tragedy tightens your throat, those tears in your eyes, who are they really for?